when it comes to financing deferred payments and vendor finance, it's essentially what you're trying to do is reduce your deposit by getting the development finance lender to lend against the purchase price rather than what you're actually transacting on day one for deferred payments, or when it comes to vendor finance, getting them to lend against the purchase price and then having the vendor come in and make up that deposit. So financing with vendor finance is no different to financing with any normal investor, so there's nothing particularly tricky about that. It's just making sure that the development finance lender is happy with it, but nothing particularly that you need to worry about there. With deferred payments, it's a much tougher strategy for them to get their head around. We found it personally on all of ours, trying to get development lenders to get their head around deferred payments. Although it's not a particularly complex strategy, it is complex for them to get their head around because they see it as, if it's £1 million and you're paying 500 grand day one, 500 grand on completion, they almost want to work off that 500 grand as the purchase price. But that isn't the purchase price. The purchase price is £1 million. So it takes that time to kind of get through development finance lenders and get them to understand this as a strategy. But if you can do that, then there's no reason why, if they lent against the million and you've deferred 500 grand of it, why they shouldn't be able to finance 100% of that day one tranche for you. And as many of you will have seen on social media, we obviously had a deal recently where the purchase price was 2.45 million. The day one tranche was 1.3 million, and we actually managed to raise 1.5 million day one. So in that scenario, we actually managed to raise 100% of the purchase price, plus an additional 200 grand for stamp duty and other fees and bits and pieces. And actually it ended up with, once the developers have paid their stamp duty and everything else, they had about 60 grand left, which has been great because they've been able to use that for cash flow to get the build started, to get the trees taken down. There was all sorts of different stuff that they needed immediate cash for, which they didn't really want to have to wait for the drawdown. So they went and spent 60 grand, which they had, which they wouldn't have had if they didn't have a deferred payment. And they've been able to go and sort of make decent chunks of progress without having too many delays. So that is how you would finance deferred payments and vendor finance, and there's some of the kind of pitfalls that you might come across on deferred payments.